So my name is Karim Verkeppenberg. I'm part of the Open Heritage project as a researcher, and we are interested in inclusive governance models of adaptive reuse.
We are part of the Open Heritage to look at the way in which communities can be involved or can even be in the lead in the reuse of heritage.
And we are now in the former mining region, the region where I'm originally also from, which stretches from Beringen, which is located in Belgium, throughout the most southern part of the Netherlands, to also partly Germany. At a certain moment, the coal was discovered here in the soil. This had a major impact on this region because they had to create an industry. They needed a lot of workforces to dig this coal. So they also people from abroad were brought to this region to work in the mines. And at the time, the mining activities were going on. The mines really was the life of the people here. So there were cultural activities organized for them. The housing was organized for them. So actually, everything was organized by the mining. This had a very big impact when the mines were closed, of course, because a lot of things people were used to just fell apart. It started, I think, from local heritage organizations, but also local groups, which started to recognize the past of this region and also started to think about adding new ideas or new functions to such kind of buildings.
When you are reusing heritage or redeveloping heritage, it's very important to not only look at the physical appearance or the stories from the past the heritage represents, but also the local meanings. So the very diverse and local stories that are behind the buildings or behind the heritage assets.
I think the functions need to address a lot of different groups in society. There are various migrant groups living in a city, for example, but there are also tourists which want to visit something. There are locals who want to have just maybe a community hall where they can meet, for example. And those functions need to be integrated in the reuse of heritage buildings. Here in Beringen, we see that there are all kinds of activities going on. There is a shopping mall, there is a diving center in the former coal washing plant, there is a climbing hall. But at the same time, one could wonder, the people visiting this place, tourists, but also people from Beringen who do their groceries here, you could wonder how aware they are of the history of this place.
It's always a challenge to make that financially feasible. But you have to consider what stories do we shut out by making big conversions like that.
Those ideas by the community are not always recognized by, for example, the municipality or a project developer, because, and it's understandable, they have to think about the economic benefits of a project, and then building a community center is of course not the first thing you would think of as a project developer. For example, this mining museum where we are located now is very important for the former miners to tell their story. And as we already noticed, they are very enthusiastic, they're very eager to share their story with us. But at the same time, there are project developers for whom it might be more interesting to make a hotel here, for example. Then what happens to the functions which are needed for the community to express their identity? What they did here is to add a new shopping mall, for example, which also attracted a lot of people from the city. And with the benefits of building this shopping mall, they then could pay the preservation and the new functions for the industrial buildings. So at the same time, functions like bringing in a ski hall generate a lot of money, and with this money we can also preserve and give new functions to other buildings. And then as part of a design project called Regionale 2008, designers and landscape architects could bring ideas in a design competition, and one of the ideas was the idea of the Cru-metropole, as it was called. And this was done by creating two touristic routes alongside various points of interest which could be touristic stops either, or those former mining areas. And then people could visit the place, could experience the landscape, could experience the individual locations, but also could learn about this identity, the identity of the region and the common storyline.
The idea for the Green Metropole was a very nice idea, and it's at the time quite well done. However, it's also a project that has been realized a few years ago, and that gives us the opportunity to also look back whether such a project actually sustains over time. And then in the Green Metropole project, you can actually see that while some things missed or weren't that well thought through.
One of the reasons was that it was a very top-down, organized, and too complex, too broad idea, which didn't really land in the landscape itself. Second reason might be that it was due to practical issues that the route never was really successful. It was from A to B designed, so people couldn't make a round tour. Traffic signs were located in weird locations. Then also when the funding was over, the information leaflets were not repressed again, and the maps were sold out, so people could not really cycle or visit the area again. And then the third reason is that the communities themselves were not really included in designing this route, so they didn't feel represented or didn't recognize themselves in the route.
So when you're designing a route, it sounds like a very logical idea to make an idea for a whole region and then see how small projects can fit into that. But actually you should do the other way around. You should look at the small stories and the small entities and then look what do they share and what story can we build from there. And that's when local communities are important as well.
But how we actually do this and how we actually incorporate local stories in the design process and in the heritage reuse process, that's still a question which is actually very difficult to answer.
That is also that we are researching what are ways in which you connect the two. So having a bigger story for a region and a common heritage or a common history is a very good idea. But how do you connect that to local diversities and local dynamics? That is exactly what we are looking for.